Hi, I'm Emma Thompson, and this is the story of how an abandoned farm turned me from the family disappointment into someone my greedy relatives couldn't ignore. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the places others consider worthless. I still remember the day of the will reading like it was yesterday. The mahogany-paneled law office felt suffocating as our family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, adjusted his glasses and began reading my parents' final wishes. The tragic car accident that took both of them had left a $50 million fortune to be divided between my sister Sarah and me. Or so I thought. To our beloved daughter Sarah, Mr. Harrison read, "We leave our investment portfolio, the family mansion, and all liquid assets." Sarah's perfectly lipsticked mouth curved into a triumphant smile. To Emma, he continued, his voice softening slightly, "We leave Grandpa Thompson's old farm property in Montana." The room fell silent. Then Sarah's laughter shattered it. "A farm?" she sneered, her designer bracelet jingling as she waved dismissively. "Oh, this is perfect." Little Emma always did prefer playing in the dirt to attending charity galas. I sat there, stunned. The 200-acre farm had been abandoned for 20 years, ever since Grandpa passed away. Dad had always called it worthless, refusing to even visit it. Now it was my only inheritance. "There must be some mistake," my Aunt Patricia interjected, her face pinched with concern that wasn't for me. Richard and Margaret would never leave their daughter with just dirt. Mr. Harrison shook his head. "The will is quite clear. The farm, including all structures and contents, belongs to Emma." Sarah stood up, smoothing her Channel dress. "Well, sis, enjoy your barns and chickens. I've got a portfolio to manage." She paused at the door, her smile cruel. "Don't worry, if you need a loan, I'm sure we can work something out. After all, what's family for?" I left the law office that day with a single manila envelope containing the farm's deed and keys. 20 years of dust coated everything when I arrived at the property the next day. The main house was a weathered 2-story structure that had seen better days, but it was the massive old barn that caught my attention. Grandpa Thompson had been an odd man, brilliant but eccentric. He'd made his fortune in mining engineering before retiring to this farm, where he spent his last years tinkering in that barn. Dad always said the old man had lost his mind, wasting his genius on a worthless piece of land. The barn door groaned as I pushed it open. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the wooden walls, illuminating decades of cobwebs. Old farming equipment sat rusting in corners. But something felt off about the space. The dimensions didn't quite match the exterior. I remember following Grandpa here as a child, watching him disappear for hours behind a hidden door. "Our little secret," he'd whisper, winking. After his death, no one could find that door. Dad searched briefly before declaring it another of his father's delusions. But I remembered. 3 taps on the north wall, then pushed the 4th board from the bottom. My hands trembled as I followed the long-forgotten pattern. Click. A section of wall swung inward, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. My phone's flashlight illuminated the way down to a massive underground room. What I saw inside made my heart stop. Covering the walls were detailed geological surveys, mining charts, and chemical analyses. In the center sat a sophisticated testing lab, preserved under dust covers. But it was the safe in the corner that changed everything. The combination was my birthday. Grandpa never forgot it, even in his final days. Inside, I found a leather-bound journal and a USB drive. The journal's first page read, "To Emma, the only one who ever bothered to listen." As I read through his meticulous notes, tears filled my eyes. Grandpa hadn't lost his mind. He'd made a discovery that would reshape the entire mining industry. The worthless farm sat on top of one of the largest rare earth element deposits in North America. He developed a revolutionary extraction process that was both efficient and environmentally friendly. The USB drive contained detailed patents, already filed, but never activated. Grandpa had been waiting for the right moment, and the right person, to bring his discovery to life. My hands shook as I realized what this meant. The farm wasn't worthless. It was worth billions. But I knew that if my family found out, they'd try to take it from me. Sarah would hire the best lawyers, claim I wasn't competent to handle such a discovery. I needed to move carefully, protect myself before anyone realized what Grandpa had left me. I spent that night in the old house, reading through every page of his journal. In the morning, I made 3 calls to a patent lawyer, a mining engineer, and an investment banker I'd befriended during my own quiet years working in finance, a career my family had dismissed as modest. "Keep this absolutely confidential," I told each of them. "I'm about to show you something that will change everything." Over the next 6 months, I worked in secret. While Sarah posted photos of her luxury vacations and charity galas, I assembled a team of the industry's best minds. The old barn became our command center, its hidden lab modernized with cutting-edge equipment. "These patents are revolutionary," Dr. Chen, our lead engineer, explained during one late-night session. "Your grandfather's extraction process could make rare earth mining both profitable and environmentally sustainable. Do you realize what this means?" I did. With the growing demand for rare earth elements in everything from smartphones to electric vehicles, we were sitting on a gold mine. Literally and figuratively. We'd incorporated Thompson Sustainable Resources quietly through a series of shell companies. I used my savings from years of careful investing to fund initial operations. Every step was calculated to keep my family in the dark. Then came Sarah's wedding, a lavish affair at the family mansion. I almost didn't attend, but I knew my absence would raise questions. "Oh, Emma," Sarah exclaimed with false warmth when I arrived. "How's farming going?" Her new husband, a hedge fund manager, snickered. "It's quite educational," I replied mildly. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask, how's the tech sector of your portfolio performing?" Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Why? Just curious. I heard rare earth element shortages are causing problems for manufacturers. Must be affecting stock prices." "I haven't checked recently," she admitted, clearly uncomfortable with her lack of knowledge. "You should look into it," I suggested, hiding my smile behind a champagne glass. The next morning, while Sarah jetted off to her honeymoon in the Maldives, we broke ground on our first extraction facility. By the time she returned 3 weeks later, Thompson Sustainable Resources had already secured contracts with 3 major tech manufacturers. The story broke in the Wall Street Journal. "Revolutionary mining company disrupts rare earth market." My phone exploded with calls from family members as our company's value soared past $1 billion in its first public trading day. "Emma," Sarah's voice was shrill when she finally reached me. "Why didn't you tell us? We're family." "Are we?" I asked quietly. I thought I was just the girl who got dirt for her inheritance. The next few weeks were chaos. Sarah and Aunt Patricia tried to claim that Grandpa's patents should have been part of the family estate. Their lawyers argued that I had concealed valuable assets. But Grandpa had planned everything perfectly. His will explicitly stated that halal contents of the farm, including any intellectual property developed there, belonged to me. The hidden lab's existence proved he developed everything on the farm property. The final showdown came at an emergency family meeting called by Aunt Patricia. They all sat around the massive dining table in the mansion, the same table where they'd once mocked my modest career choices. "You have to understand," Sarah pleaded, her designer bracelets clinking nervously. "Dad would have wanted the family to share in this." I pulled out Grandpa's journal, opening to a marked page. "Dear Emma," I read aloud, "I'm leaving you this farm because you're the only one who saw its value beyond dollar signs. Your father and sister chase wealth, but you chased knowledge. That's why you'll succeed where they failed." The room fell silent. "You know what the difference is between us, Sarah?" I continued, closing the journal. "When you got the family fortune, I congratulated you. When I built something of my own, you tried to take it. We can work something out," she began, but I cut her off. "Actually, we can't, but I will give you some free advice. Invest in sustainable technology. Thompson Sustainable Resources is about to announce a major expansion." As I walked out of the mansion, Aunt Patricia called after me. "Your parents would be ashamed of how selfish you're being." I turned back one last time. "No, they'd be ashamed. They never saw what Grandpa saw in me. But that's their loss. Just like this company is your loss." Today, Thompson Sustainable Resources is valued at $12 billion. We're revolutionizing the mining industry while protecting the environment. The old farm has become a state-of-the-art research facility, though I kept the barn exactly as Grandpa left it, secret room and all. Sarah still tries to reconcile occasionally, usually when she needs something. Last month, she called about investing in our latest venture. I had my assistant direct her to our public investor relations line. The family mansion was recently put up for sale. Sarah's risky investments and lavish lifestyle had finally caught up with her. I bought it through a shell company and turned it into a science education center for underprivileged kids. Yesterday, I received an invitation to speak at my old high school's graduation ceremony. The topic? Finding value in unexpected places. I accepted immediately, already planning my speech. After all, sometimes the greatest fortune isn't what you're given, but what you discover when everyone else has stopped looking. As for the old farm, I still live in Grandpa's house, though I've renovated it thoughtfully. Every morning, I walk to the barn and tap that secret panel, remembering the man who saw past appearances to true value, both in the land and in me. They say success is the best revenge, but I've learned it's not about revenge at all. It's about proving that true worth isn't in what you inherit, but in what you create. And sometimes, the most valuable inheritance isn't money, it's the wisdom to see what others miss. Hi, I'm Maya Chin, and this is the story of how my small family restaurant became one of the most exclusive dining spots in New York City, all because my in-laws couldn't resist tearing me down one last time. Cooking has always been my passion. Growing up in a modest Chinese-American household, I spent countless hours in our tiny kitchen, learning traditional recipes from my grandmother while adding my own contemporary twists. My parents wanted me to pursue a respectable career in medicine or law, but my heart belonged to the culinary arts. That's how I met James, my husband. He was a regular at the small Asian fusion restaurant where I worked as a sous chef. He'd come in 3 times a week, always ordering something different, always asking to compliment the chef. When we finally met, the connection was instant. He loved my innovative takes on traditional dishes, and I loved his genuine appreciation for culinary creativity. What I didn't love was his family. The Whittakers were old money, with a lineage that apparently traced back to the Mayflower, something his mother, Elizabeth, mentioned at every possible opportunity. His father, Richard, was a real estate mogul who owned half the commercial properties in Manhattan's Upper East Side. And his sister, Victoria, was a social media influencer who'd never worked a day in her life, but somehow had 3 million followers on Instagram. From the moment James introduced me, they made it clear I wasn't their kind of people. A chef? Elizabeth had said, her voice dripping with disdain. How quaint. But James stood by me, and we got married despite their objections. I thought time would heal the rift, that proving myself as a loving wife would eventually win them over. I was wrong. 5 years into our marriage, I decided to pursue my dream. With our savings and a small inheritance from my grandmother, I opened Fusion Garden, a cozy restaurant that blended traditional Asian cuisine with modern American influences. James supported me completely, even though it meant living on a tighter budget while the restaurant found its footing. The first year was tough, as it is for any new restaurant. We had good days and bad days, but slowly, we were building a loyal customer base. Food critics were starting to take notice, and our weekend reservations were usually booked solid. It wasn't a Michelin star establishment, but it was mine, and I was proud of what we were creating. Then came last year's Thanksgiving. The Whittakers insisted on hosting the entire extended family, including me and James. Usually, I tried to avoid these gatherings, but James convinced me it would be good for business networking. Dad's friends are always looking for new places to host their business dinners, he said optimistically. I should have trusted my instincts. The evening started with the usual subtle jabs. Elizabeth commented on my simple dress, which cost 3 months of profits. Victoria asking if I needed recommendations for a good plastic surgeon. She knew a great one who fixed her nose. And Richard barely acknowledging my existence. But it was during dinner that everything fell apart. So Maya, Elizabeth started, swirling her wine glass with practiced elegance. James tells me you're little. The restaurant is still operating. How surprising. I felt James tense beside me. Yes, we're doing quite well, actually. Our weekend reservations are usually. Oh, darling. Victoria cut in, scrolling through her phone. I saw your reviews online. 3 stars? That's barely passing, isn't it? Actually, 3 stars on Michelin is. I tried to explain, but Richard interrupted. Let's be honest here, he said, putting down his fork with a loud clunk that silenced the table. We've all eaten there. The food is mediocre at best. No innovation, no style, just worthless food from a worthless chef who clearly doesn't understand fine dining. The table fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me, some with pity, others with poorly concealed amusement. Dad, James started, but I placed my hand on his arm. No, Richard's entitled to his opinion, I said quietly, standing up. Though I find it interesting that someone who thinks my food is worthless has reserved a table at Fusion Garden 6 times in the past month under different names. Elizabeth's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. What's wrong, Elizabeth? Didn't think I'd recognize your husband when he came in wearing different suits, sitting at corner tables, taking detailed notes? Or did you think I wouldn't notice Victoria's anonymous food blogger friends coming in with their cameras? Richard's face had turned an interesting shade of red. We were merely conducting market research. The property your restaurant sits on is owned by the Chang Family Trust. I finished for him. My grandmother's family. Not part of your real estate empire. and not for sale. The silence that followed was deafening. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I continued, placing my napkin on the table, "I have a restaurant to run. A worthless one, apparently, but it's mine." I walked out of that dining room with my head held high, ignoring Elizabeth's spluttering and Victoria's furious typing on her phone. James followed me to the car, apologizing profusely, but I barely heard him. Because during those painful minutes at the Whitaker family table, a plan had started forming in my mind. A plan that would take 6 months to execute, would cost me every favor I'd ever earned in the culinary world, and would ultimately change everything. They thought my food was worthless. Fine. They wanted to conduct market research. Perfect. They didn't think I understood fine dining. Oh, they had no idea what I was capable of. That night, as James slept, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my old mentor from culinary school, now a celebrated chef in Paris. The second was to a restaurant designer who owed me a favor. And the third was to a certain celebrity chef known for transforming restaurants. By morning, Operation Restaurant Revolution was in motion. The next 6 months would test everything I knew about cooking, business, and revenge. And the best part, the Whitakers would never see it coming. The next morning, I arrived at Fusion Garden earlier than usual. My staff could sense something had changed. There was a new energy in my movements, a spark in my eyes that hadn't been there before. They'd learn why soon enough. "Team meeting in 10 minutes," I announced, tying my apron with practiced precision. "Everyone needs to be there." And I mean everyone. As my staff gathered in the dining room, servers, line cooks, dishwashers, hosts, I took a deep breath and shared my vision. Over the next 6 months, we would transform Fusion Garden into something unprecedented in New York's culinary scene. But I needed their complete dedication and discretion. "What I'm proposing will be the hardest work you've ever done," I told them frankly. "Double shifts, late nights, endless practice. Some of you might want to leave, and I'll write glowing recommendations if you do. But if you stay," I smiled, "you'll be part of culinary history." To my amazement, not a single person left. They'd seen how I treated my staff, like family, better than my actual in-laws had ever treated me. They trusted me, and that trust was about to pay off. The next few months were a blur of activity, all conducted under absolute secrecy. The restaurant designer I'd called, Marcus, worked after hours, transforming our cozy dining room into something spectacular. We replaced every table, chair, and light fixture. The walls were redone in hand-painted murals depicting the fusion of Eastern and Western culinary traditions. The kitchen was completely reorganized and equipped with state-of-the-art equipment. My old mentor, Chef Jacques, flew in from Paris twice a month to help refine our techniques and train my staff. Together, we revolutionized every recipe on the menu, elevating each dish while maintaining the soul of the original concept. We weren't just making food, we were creating edible art. But the real game changer was my third call from that night, to Gordon Ramsay's team. I'd met Gordon briefly during my culinary school days, and he remembered my innovative dessert fusion that won a national competition. When I explained my situation and my vision, he was intrigued enough to get involved. The plan was simple but ambitious. Gordon would feature Fusion Garden in a special episode of his new streaming series about revolutionary restaurants. But first, we had to become revolutionary. For 6 months, we operated on 2 tracks. During regular hours, we maintained our usual service. though with gradually increasing prices and limited availability of reservations. Richard continued his undercover visits, taking notes and looking smug. Victoria's blogger friends kept coming in, posting lukewarm reviews about our decent but uninspired offerings. But after hours, we were building something extraordinary. My staff trained relentlessly. Every dish was deconstructed and rebuilt. Every service pattern was choreographed to perfection. We weren't just preparing food, we were creating an experience. James watched all this with a mixture of pride and concern. "Are you sure about this?" he'd ask, seeing me return home exhausted at 3 a.m. "You don't have to prove anything to them." "This isn't about proving something," I'd reply. "This is about becoming something." Finally, after 6 months of preparation, we were ready. The restaurant closed for 2 weeks for renovations. Victoria immediately posted about how this was the beginning of the end for Fusion Garden. Richard was overheard at his country club betting on how long before we went bankrupt. Perfect. The night of our reopening, I made sure the Whittakers received a special invitation. Elizabeth's RSVP came back with a note about how they were so concerned about our struggles and would of course support family in difficult times. They arrived as a group: Richard, Elizabeth, Victoria, and several of their society friends. James met them at the door, playing his part perfectly. "Maya's in the kitchen," he said, sounding worried. "She's been acting strange lately." They sat at the best table, already smirking, ready to witness what they assumed would be my humiliation. Then the show began. The new Fusion Garden was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Each dish was a theatrical presentation of flavor and technique. Dim sum that levitated on magnetic plates. Soup served in hand-blown glass spheres that dissolved when touched. Traditional Chinese dishes deconstructed and rebuilt with molecular gastronomy techniques. And in the middle of service, right on cue, Gordon Ramsay walked into the kitchen. The dining room went silent as he emerged a few minutes later, sampling dishes, nodding approvingly. Camera crews captured everything, including the Whittakers' increasingly pale faces. "This," Gordon announced to the cameras, "is the future of fusion cuisine. Chef Maya has created something extraordinary here. Michelin should be calling any day now." Elizabeth's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Victoria's phone livestream suddenly went quiet. Richard's face had turned that interesting shade of red again. Then I emerged from the kitchen, no longer in chef's whites, but in a designer dress, followed by some of the most renowned food critics in New York. They'd all been there incognito, scattered throughout the dining room. "The property offers are no longer necessary, Richard," I said quietly, stopping at their table. "Fusion Garden isn't for sale. In fact, we're expanding. That empty building next door, the one you've been trying to buy for years. I closed on it this morning. We're opening a culinary school. You can't." Richard sputtered. "Oh, and Elizabeth?" I continued. "Those reservations you've been trying to make under different names. We're booked solid for the next year. But don't worry, I've saved a permanent table for my family." I smiled sweetly. "Right next to the kitchen, where you can smell everything, but taste like anything." The episode aired 3 months later. Fusion Garden became the hottest reservation in New York overnight. We earned our first Michelin star within 6 months, with rumors of a second on the way. The culinary school opened, focusing on fusion cuisine and innovative techniques. The Whittakers? They still come in sometimes, sitting at their assigned table by the kitchen, watching as I live my dream. Victoria's followers love her posts about her talented sister-in-law. Elizabeth brags at her social clubs about how she always saw my potential. Richard even offered to invest in my next venture. I declined, of course. Some things, like self-respect and true passion, are worth more than money or social status. My grandmother taught me that, along with her recipes that started this whole journey. James and I are expecting our first child now. Yesterday, I felt the baby kick while I was developing a new dessert menu. I placed my hand on my belly and whispered, "Remember this, little one. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." The kitchen timer dings, and I have to go. There's a new fusion dish I'm working on, combining my grandmother's secret xiao long bao recipe with a French soufflé technique. The critics will love it. But more importantly, I love it. And in the end, that's what makes anything truly worthless or priceless, not what others say about it, but what you know it's worth. As I head back to my kitchen, I pass the Whittaker's table. It's empty tonight, but the reservation sign is still there, a small reminder of how far I've come. Some might call it petty, keeping that table as a monument to their disdain. I call it seasoning, that extra pinch of satisfaction that makes success taste even sweeter.